Kyrie Irving and Uncle Drew, Lionsgate, an urban b-ball legend steers the new kids away from victimology and rage. Charles Stone II's Uncle Drew confirms the urban legend that the best stand-up comedy, face-to-face drama, and spontaneously creative choreography can be found on city basketball courts. Stone's film is centered on Harlem's Rucker Park, the real-life side of amateur, yet stellar, b-ball competition. It's where many professional players and college draftees were first discovered. Beastie Boy Adam Yauch memorialized Rucker Park in his exhilarating 2008 sports documentary Gunnin for that #1 spot. B-ball enthusiast Dax Winslow, Lil Rel Howery, loses face at Rucker and has resorted to coaching ambitious newcomers who are looking for their own #1 spot. This contrast between talent and skill, experience and facileness, is Stone's wheelhouse. His wonderful 2004 baseball film Mr. 3000 starred Bernie Mac in a classic illustration of a mature athlete competing against younger, flashier, even more arrogant players, although his real challenge was with himself. Advertisement Dax similarly frets about losing I and a nightmare. His team's teddy bear mascot cries, "That's unbearable." And that's when I instantly knew I was loving this movie's sweet-natured, double-barrel jokiness. Dax gets rescued from despair by blessed good fortune when he meets Uncle Drew, Kyrie Irving, an aged Rucker Park star. The Uncle Drew myth is introduced in a hilarious barbershop sequence where black guys entertain one another by trading urban fables about Drew that secretly boost their own ego. Septuagenarian Drew proves to be more than myth when he schools Dax on sports and music. Folk history. How do you get Biggie on 8-track? Dax asks after Drew drops a cartridge playing the Isley Brothers between the sheets into the console of his old-fashioned make-out van. Youngblood Dax knows the melody only from its sample on the Notorious B.I.G's rap hit Big Papa. The scene's cultural heritage game is tricky, but telling.Those two R&B and hip-hop tracks were fairly contemporaneous, so Stone and screenwriter Jay Longino are making a point about different generational perceptions. Drew knew the art and ingenuity that influenced Biggie, the Notorious B.I.G, and his sense of recall is crucial to how Stone and Longino relate the black cultural past to the black cultural present. More than a game, it's slam-dunk political and cultural consciousness. From the opening b-ball montage, scored to wah-wah guitar riffs that echo 70s blaxploitation and disco, Uncle Drew confronts millennial black culture with the traditions and ancestors that preceded it. Drew restores Dax's confidence by assembling several of his 60s teammates: Preacher, Chris Webber, Lights, Reggie Miller, Boots, Nate Robinson, Betty Lou, Lisa Leslie, and Big Fella, Shaquille O'Neal. These veterans personify the heritage Dax is estranged from, becoming his dream team in a tournament against bodacious Rucker rivals. Advertisement. The old-school revival plot emulates the pop references of Larry Cohen's 1994 original Gangstaz, which reunited 70s blaxploitation stars Jim Brown, Pam Grier, Fred Williamson, and Richard Roundtree. But Drew's teammates are stars in disguise. They're folk heroes who, having moved to the sidelines, away from sports, or onto the decrepitude of forgotten seniors, find one more chance to prove what they know and what they can do. Congressional Black Caucus members Maxine Waters and John Lewis, who of late seem to misremember the exemplary behavior of the civil rights era, could learn something from Uncle Drew. Each athlete actor is genuinely charismatic and more than inspirational. There's marvelous good humor in seeing Boston Celtics point guard Kyrie Irving, who is only 26, hide his handsomeness within white-haired, wrinkle-face makeup. His stunt combines Richard Pryor's Mudbone with Tyler Perry's Madea. It's cultural continuity and a life lesson that the other athletes' actors share. As female jock, Betty Lou says to male jock preacher, game recognizes game. No classic Hollywood screwball comedy romance ever stated it better. Off-court, the Betty Lou and preacher wife and husband team are evangelists who run calm before the storm Divine Ministries. These sports figures bring uncanny substance that Howery, the only amusing performer in Get Out, lacks, and that Tiffany Haddish, who plays his ex, reduces to cartoonishness. Congressional Black Caucus members Maxine Waters and John Lewis, who of late seem to misremember the exemplary behavior of the civil rights era, could learn something from Uncle Drew. The light-hearted example Drew presents to Dax is a stark contrast to Waters and Lewis's bouts of petulance. A non-pessimistic, non-sarcastic entertainment like this offers a truly radical political proposition when its characters puts faith in principle rather than what street culture calls the hustle. Advertisement hustling on the court can overtake political and moral principles. Black politicians and showbiz celebrities alike are habitually committed to getting over. They share the same concern as star athletes who are amass wealth and social influence, hoping it will protect them from suffering everyday social inequities. But when Drew and his veterans recall 1968, they're remembering more than a peak instance of fashion and rebellion. They understand the need to prove themselves to themselves while teaching Dax's generation about perseverance. The moment Drew tells Dax you don't love the game, you're a hustler, is devastating because that realization goes against the gangster mentality of unethical black social development. It cuts to the quick. Non-black audiences can benefit from this lesson too. Advertisement Stone's previous films, Paid in Full, Drumline, Mr. 3000, are the only movies in American history to penetrate black male insecurity. If you don't know those movies, you cannot appreciate how Hollywood films from Precious to 12 Years a Slave to Straight Outta Compton to Moonlight ignore the genuine, humane possibilities in black American life. Uncle Drew continues Stone's sensitive, disarming, loving approach that avoids currently fashionable black victimology. The final Rucker Park game is predictable and not as rousing as the real game seen in Gunnin for that #1 spot, yet by then, Stone and Longino's cynicism-free approach climaxes with a dance club scene where the codgers revive themselves. Shaq walks and pop and locks majestically. Their Wrigley, celebratory hip-hop moves reveal the same cultural essence that Kanye West's new song Ghost Town ingeniously expressed. I feel kinda free, we're still the kids we used to be. In decades past, when the NBA offseason arrived in June, it meant no more basketball for a while, a break from, in this reviewer's humble opinion, the world's greatest professional sport until the fall, when the new season tipped off again. But ours is an age of media saturation, of total brand dominance in every sphere, of 24/7 coverage. So NBA fans now get to exult in the draft, in the drama of off-season trades and free agency, and, starting this year with the release of Uncle Drew, in the revival of the novelty basketball movie. Here is a project with truly canned origins, a series of Pepsi Max commercials that debuted in 2012, starring an ensemble of mostly athletes, with a one-joke premise: an old man is good at basketball, stretched into a 103-minute feature film. crazier still, it largely works. It's a perfectly watchable time at the movies, at least for anyone missing the NBA over the summer. But it's hard to shake the underlying corporate air of all the hijinks ensuing, and the sense that the director, Charles Stone III, and writer, Jay Longino, won't let their stars indulge in sillier tangents. The jokes could be dirtier, the plot looser, the basketball action more gleefully ludicrous. Instead, everything feels very competent, but safe. If the last genuinely iconic NBA-branded movie, Space Jam, was centered around the collaboration of Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, Uncle Drew is a team-up between Irving, an all-star point guard for the Boston Celtics, and a troupe of impressive makeup artists. Using rubbery prosthetics, they transform him into the legendary streetball player Uncle Drew, once a hallowed king of Harlem's famed outdoor court Rucker Park, who has a habit of wearing sweepants, calling everyone Youngblood, and dazzling unsuspecting opponents with his superb crossover dribble. According to the gossipy barber Angelo, J.B. Smoot, also in comical old age makeup, perhaps to heighten the verisimilitude of Irving's look, Uncle Drew was the king of Rucker Park in the 1960s, dominating its tournaments with a squad of similarly gifted legends, until a mysterious romantic entanglement split the group up for good. After watching the Septuagenarian Drew show off his skills, amateur coach Dax, Lil Rel Howery, entreats him to get the band back together, desperate to field a team at Rucker Park's upcoming tournament after his initial crew was poached out from under him by the villainous Mookie, Nick Kroll. And thus, the film's bare-bones story begins, largely a travelogue punctuated with easy generation gap jokes. Drew prefers 70s funk to hip-hop, drives a retro van outfitted with an 8-track tape, and enjoys lecturing showboating youngsters about the fundamental unselfishness of the game, when played well. He and Dax drive around the country picking up his old teammates, all played by former NBA stars. There's Preacher, Chris Webber, a power forward who has become a showboating minister. Lights, Reggie Miller, a sweet shooting guard who is now legally blind. Boots, Nate Robinson, a fast break specialist confined to a wheelchair. And Big Fella, Shaquille O'Neal, a domineering center who now runs a dojo. Drew and Big Fella have some unresolved conflict over a woman in their past, who died off-screen in the intervening years. That's about as well-rounded as a female character gets to be in Uncle Drew, which also features Tiffany Haddish as Dax's mean ex-girlfriend Jess and Erica Ash's Boots' well-meaning niece Maya. Every male character in Uncle Drew is one-dimensional, but the women get one less dimension than that, existing mostly as plot devices, though WNBA legend Lisa Leslie does show up to get a few highlights on the court. In general, this is a film that suffers anytime it tries to include actual plot twists and thrives in moments of goofy banter. Set pieces include a rollicking car chase with lights behind the wheel, an extended dance-off at the club, and, of course, plenty of hoops action at Rucker Park, choreographed to imitate a typical NBA highlight reel. Howery, one of the breakout stars of Get Out in 2017, is a reliable sparring partner for Irving and the rest of the old-timers. Kroll dips into the cartoonish vibe of his cult classic Kroll Show to play a delightfully uncool hanger-on at Rucker Park. But it's never a great sign when your comedy's best moments are confined to the post-credits blooper reel. Uncle Drew is at its strongest when it's being completely inane and farcical. It's not like there's any real question whether the good guys will triumph on the court. But given that Uncle Drew was originally birthed by Pepsi's advertising department, it's hardly surprising that his feature film feels like its edges have been sanded off. As a work of corporate branding, Uncle Drew is a success. As a piece of summer entertainment, it's pleasant enough.